Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of Congregational Humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's such a joy to be here, especially a little bit warmer than outside, right? But sharing music with all of you. And I know the theme of the month is storytelling, so I'm going to try to tie the pieces that I will play a little bit into that. Probably it's a bit personal, more like my story. As many of you know, even though I was born in Italy, I moved to Mexico as a young kid, and I grew up for the most part of my time on Earth there. And I'm very connected with Mexican culture. And as an artist nowadays, one of the things that I like to do is, of course, promote Mexican music. So there will be some Mexican music and other things on the program as well. So the first two pieces that I will play are actually by probably the most well-known Mexican composer, Manuel Ponce. And the first one, it's the second movement of his second Piano Sonata. And I just want to show you very quickly. It's very fun. It's picking up a very we could say a very popular tune in Mexico called El Perico, which probably you might even recognize. It sounds something like this. Something like that. And but it's very interesting how Ponce actually gets this melody, and at the beginning it's a little more simple, a little more like a waltz, and towards the end it gets transformed by a very modernist context, I would say. The second piece, also by Ponce from his suite Cubana, it's called Paz de Ocaso, which means peace at sunset. So it's a very, it's actually the piece that closes that suite. It's a very, I would say, impressionist inspired in the harmonies, the ambience of the piano, the colors, etc. And finally, I will close with the we would call it an abridged version of the second Scherzo by Chopin. I promise you that you will hear it complete by me one day, but not today. I abridged it a little bit. And this piece, well, there are two reasons why I'm pairing it with Ponce. The first one is, of course, as many composers in Mexico, Ponce draw his first inspiration in writing piano music because of Chopin. Also, Chopin is the reason why I became a pianist. When I actually, particularly with this piece, it was one of the pieces that I said, I really want to be a pianist, to be able to perform that one day. And so I think both, like stylistically, musically, but also an emotional connection to this piece. So I hope you will enjoy all three of those pieces.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Good morning to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis on this bright and frigid Sunday morning here in Minneapolis. I'm at a bit of a handicap because my iPad started updating. So I have no script in front of me, so I'm just going to wing it for a little while and see what happens. But welcome, whoever you are, wherever you are. However you're feeling this morning, whether you decided to stay warm and safe at home or you decided to brace the cold and come to be together in person, you know, whoever you love, whatever your identity, you are welcome here. On this morning, as we face an interesting day tomorrow, this convergence of Martin Luther King Jr. Day and the inauguration of the incoming president, we're just going to be looking at what it means for us to be in this time and the stories that are so important for us to cling to and insist upon telling and telling again at this time. I also want to acknowledge that we are living, existing, walking on the traditional territory of the Dakota Oyate, and particularly the Wapatuka tribe, who still call this place home. It's important for us to acknowledge that their land was violently stolen from them and to honor the many ways in which they have continued to care for the land that we are on. And may we, in gratitude, take care of this earth, taking only what we need and restoring what we have taken. Our E-squared programming, our family programming, is going on right now on the level below us. We also have a multi-generational space here in this room because we are a multi-generational community, and it's always important to know that all ages are welcome here in the sanctuary, in the assembly hall, excuse me. That was a slip. Sorry about that. So now, why don't you just take a moment? Here comes Bethany with a script for me. Woohoo! Anyway, won't you just take a moment to greet one another? Those of you online, you know, click the little, if you're live streaming on our website, click the little button to go to YouTube there at the bottom of the screen, because that'll take you to a place where you can chat and interact with one another and say hello to one another, as we're doing that in the assembly hall here. So please say hello to one another. Okay, I see the only thing I missed, really, was just to say what a pleasure it is to be part of this morning's assembly, which is always made possible by so many people who participate, our wonderful staff, and this morning Adele and Lena and Caitlin and Paul and Hoyt, and as always our Cracker Jack media team back there. And this morning's music is being provided by Amos Lucidi, who you already heard, and along with our director of music, Mike Vasich, who will be accompanying us. So thank you, one and all. So now, I invite you, wherever you are, to just take a moment to take a deep breath, to settle into this time and this space and center yourselves. Some Sundays we reflect, you know, some Sundays we look for hope and joy. Today we come together, I hope, to get a little fired up, to engage in some righteous resistance to these times. Today's opening words were written by Ade Amakraba, to remember. We have come here today to remember what some are intent on making us forget. To remember a man who fought to end segregation. To remember a man and all the people with him who marched to counter prejudice and oppression. To remember people filled with peace and hope. To remember a man with promise and a dream, whose voice rang out for justice and freedom. All these things we remember and honor in the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a life well lived in service to all. May it be so. So come, let us join in remembering the stories that give us power and courage. Paul is coming to light our chalice flame, and we're going to light that flame with words expressing our commitment to justice. So please join me with reading the words on the screen. We work to be a diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. So our chalice flame is lit with the flame of justice. So now let's speak our congregational covenant together. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you, Paul. So we have been talking about the power of story this month, and in particular, the power of stories to shape our future. The familiar and iconic I Have a Dream speech was a story told by Martin Luther King Jr. to challenge the unjust, racist, and divisive stories of his day. He challenged the story of inequality that was being told at the time, the story that people were living in. And he did that by telling a new and different story, giving people the confidence to say that we don't have to live this way just because of the way it is. It's always good to revisit his words, so let's watch a video that includes snippets of his words in his own voice alongside paintings by Kadir Nelson.
I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. When we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Doesn't matter how many times I've heard that. Bill Sinkford, Reverend Bill Sinkford, who was the first African-American president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, tells of singing, "We shall overcome," in the heady days of civil rights, and in particular on the streets of Atlanta in 1968, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was buried. He is told of how he sang those words hundreds of times until one day the words, "Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome," rang hollow. They felt like they were meaningless because we weren't moving forward on dismantling racism. But he said, and this was way back in 2007, that as Unitarian Universalists, we've been handed new opportunities to move forward, new opportunities that require new commitments. And in words as true today as then, Sinkford told us that the claim of innocence is no longer an option. Ignorance of truth does not alter its legacy. And so I invite you to sing the great song, "We Shall Overcome," and with each verse to challenge yourself to feel the commitment to overcoming injustice deep in your heart. This is ours to do. It's number 169 in the Gray Songbook, and the words are on the screen. I invite you to rise in body and or spirit to sing.
We shall First Unitarian Society is a congregational humanist community. We're here for each other, our neighbors, and our planet. And one manifestation of this is our caring team. If at any time there's something that's happening in your life that you'd like to share with our team or with the community, please send a note to Joys and Concerns at firstunitarian.org. You can also do this by using the contact form on our website. After the assembly, you're invited to stop at the card basket downstairs and send a note to folks who are unable to attend assembly and or the people that we mention in Joys and Concerns. This morning, I'd like to share the news that Julie McKenzie, who trained our youth and managed childcare at FUS for 2 years, has just lost her sister, Gail. The death was unexpected and difficult for the family. And Alan Steinhar's sister, who is 83 years old, has passed away in Southern California. Much of the family is there, and they are safe from the fires. And for me, sadly, we've also received word that Vincent Barton, a member of FUS since 1988, has died at the age of 93. His wife predeceased him, and our condolences are with the family. That we may stay in touch with our own humanity and remember those who are suffering, in particular today, those impacted by the California wildfires, and with hopes for success in the unfolding ceasefire in Gaza. Let's take some time in silence to reflect on the human experience, the joys, the sorrows, and the milestones in our lives and in the lives of those we love and in the lives of all beings everywhere. May all be safe, happy, and well.
These words come from Brene Brown's blog and is something she posted back in 2015, almost 10 years ago. While she speaks specifically about racism, you could just about insert any current injustice and it would still ring true. Brown writes, "Our collective stories of race in the U.S. are not easy to own. They are stories of slavery, violence, and systemic dehumanization. We will have to choose courage over comfort. We will have to feel our way through the shame and sorrow. We will have to listen. We will have to challenge our resistance and our defensiveness. We will have to keep listening even when we want to scream, "I'm not that way. This isn't my fault." We have to examine and own stereotypes and prejudices. Every single one of us has them. It will be tough. We will need to sit down with our children and talk about privilege. This means honest conversations about how we were raised and what we need to work on. No blaming or shaming, but truth. It's not productive to deny how hard we all work for what we have, but it's not honest to deny that many of us are afforded privileges based on who we are and what we look like. Will these conversations stop violent hate crimes? No one knows for sure, but we shouldn't underestimate the power of love and truth-telling. This is not bigger than us. This is us. Yes, we need to own 1,000,000 heartbreaking stories of discrimination and prejudice, and make millions of changes, and hold space for 1,000,000 tough conversations. But if each one of us owns one story and makes one change and has one honest conversation where we listen more than defend or offer false comfort, we can do this. There is a way to write a brave new ending to one of the most painful stories in our history. What remains to be seen is if we have the will and courage. I believe we do.
So, do we have a way or ways to write brave new chapters, maybe even a brave new ending to this period in American history, this time when white Christian nationalism is gaining power, this time when the essential humanity of so many beloveds is being threatened? Do we have a way? Maybe more importantly, do we have the will? All too often, to our paralife here, we don't invest in crafting the life-giving stories. Instead we just kind of give book reports about what they are doing. We read and study and listen to the stories all around us, and then we conjure up what can seem like an outsider's report on the book that someone else is writing, as if all the power lies elsewhere and that we have none. The concept of being simultaneously a character in and one of the writers of the story is somewhat challenging. Be we hero or victim, bystander or protagonist, lead character or just an extra, it's easy to sometimes feel the story is being written and played out by forces much larger than us. And yet I believe, and I hope you believe, if you have any faith in human agency, that we play a not insignificant role in determining how the story unfolds. We have the ability to tell stories that change the future, stories that we can live into for the sake of our children and our children's children. Thinking about book reports reminded me about that scene in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, where the Peanuts gang has been assigned a 100-word book report on Peter Rabbit. Does anybody know this? The assignment is a report on someone else's story, a story that's already been written, and still each of them puts a personal spin on it. Lucy's kind of above doing a book report, sees it as stupid, uses a list of the vegetables in the garden, along with the conclusion, the very, 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 very end, in order to reach 100 words. Linus, predictably, is a little over-academic, reporting on the psychological and sociological messages embedded in the Peter Rabbit story, and becomes so ethereal as to render his report inaccurate and kind of meaningless. And then there's Charlie Brown, poor Charlie. He's distracted, he procrastinates, he worries about how it's affecting him, about how he hasn't had enough sleep or enough time, so much pressure, so he makes a sandwich and never writes the report. And Schroeder, the artist and musician, struggles to find meaning in something so banal as Peter Rabbit. And he essentially does a book report on Robin Hood, trying to make some pretty dubious associations between the actions of Robin Hood and the rabbit. And we should learn something from Schroeder. Forget the assigned book. Tell a story that inspires. And yet I think of all these characters, liberals maybe most identify with that little underdog Charlie Brown. We hem and we haw and we procrastinate and we resist stepping into the limelight, preferring to remain unseen, even to the extreme of putting a brown paper bag over our heads. And this is especially true, I think, of Unitarian Universalists, because out of respect, we don't want to impose our story on someone else, so we remain quiet. We keep our story hidden. The most recent Ezra Klein podcast, in an interview with Chris Hayes of MSNBC, focuses on the ways in which attention has become the most important commodity in modern politics. Stories are being told by the right whose main purpose is to draw attention, just to be titillating. The meaner and the more outlandish, the better. It's not about the content, it's about making the news and to capture the spotlight, and in so doing to keep control. And of course, Klein digs into how the left doesn't get it, hasn't played the game, has taken the high road, and in so doing has also lost the attention of many. Now, to be clear, Klein is not suggesting taking the low road. He's commenting on how going low is what seems to get attention. I think what I appreciated most in that podcast was their discussion about the difference between what gets our attention and what we think is important. They're not the same thing. Attention, as it turns out, has no internal moral compass. We simply look toward the noise, the bright lights, even when those things might be morally dubious, even lies, and still they get our attention and the attention of the nation. And so we write book reports on the stories being told by the attention grabbers rather than authoring our own stories. We lean into being the underdog, and we turn our attention toward things that aren't important. Tomorrow, another disturbing chapter will go down in history books. The second inauguration of Donald J. Trump. And if you happen to be a supporter of his, so be it. I need to say this. Tomorrow, the possibility of America becoming a theocracy, a form of government where a deity or a religion is the supreme ruling authority, comes into clearer focus. Theocracy, even fascism, looms on the horizon. And if you're like me, you've been reading and listening to a lot of doom and gloom stories about the future of this country and of democracy itself. It's pretty easy to get sucked into that place. It feels so real and so unavoidable and just destined to be. Doom and gloom gets our attention. You know, for example, this week I listened to the NPR podcast Extremely American, in which the hosts take an inside look at Christian nationalism. They tell a story centered around Pastor Doug Wilson, who leads Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. Wilson's vision for that small college town is to claim it for Jesus. He preaches that non-Christians shouldn't be able to govern. So congregants are running for public office. The church has been buying up the downtown. And that's just the start. He and his allies want to make the whole country an explicitly Christian nation. They believe that their particular kind of Christianity is the only right belief, that it is the ideal moral doctrine, and it should supersede all others. And don't think this is a small fringe group. They have many affiliated congregations across the U.S., very popular podcasts, dozens of books. There are 500 schools using a curriculum created by this group. They have very ambitious goals. They want America to be a theocracy. The story they tell is that there's only one right and true belief system. And I won't go into more details, but their story perpetuates hatred of the other. Be that an immigrant, a person of color, a transgender person, etc., etc. And it is this perspective, this story, that is seeped into right-wing politics and is getting the attention. It is a hateful, fearful, in-your-face story. I actually think that the reason dystopian fiction like that of Octavia Butler is so popular right now, because we're looking for alternative stories. The real ones are so hard to face. Chris Hayes, in that interview with Ezra Klein, speaks of the need for stories with a vision. He just isn't seeing them happening anywhere. But he talks about how stories that are the opposite of doom are so needed. He says we need to conceptualize utopias, better worlds. He says, quote, "I think it's probably really important to us, collectively and individually, to put our attention toward a vision of what we think something great would be. To use our attention to write better stories." And I believe it begins with us believing that we have an important story to tell. And we do. I believe that we have within us an "I have a dream" speech for these times. We just need to get it out. We have a dream, you know? We have a life-giving story that the world needs. It's a story about people coming together to care for one another and for our earth. It's a story that insists on bodily autonomy, that tells of a common commitment to hearing all voices, that privileges the good of the whole over the privileged few. It's a story about a people who are motivated to act based on shared values of equity and interdependence and generosity. It's a story where no one goes hungry, where all have a warm place to sleep, where every being is affirmed for exactly who they are, where no one's in danger because of their identity, a place where decent wages make it possible for everyone to afford food to eat and a place to live. A world in which we care for our earth, taking no more than we can use and replacing what we take. King spoke so eloquently 60 plus years ago of how one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners would be able to sit down together at a table of brotherhood. And of his dream for a time when his children would be judged not for the color of their skin, but for the content of their character. And while we would use more gender-inclusive language today, the dream remains the same: justice and respect for all. Yesterday, I spent a couple of very cold hours at the state capitol listening to inspiring voices from right here in Minnesota, along with hundreds of other people. Voices of folks who are actively working for change, and to a person, they spoke of the need to unify, to act together, knowing that every action, no matter how small, has an impact because it changes the storyline. We need to act collectively to ensure justice for all, for women's rights, for racial justice, for reproductive rights, for trans rights, for disability justice, for climate justice, for food and housing for all. And never forget that all of these things are connected. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And so rather than writing books about doom and gloom, we can use our creative powers to tell a different story and to write new chapters right now. We can live convinced that diversity, equity, inclusion, love, and justice are the values that must rule our country. I know many of you are doing this work right now. But what would it look like if we were all so convinced, so committed that we would act to tangibly create that world within our neighborhoods and within our schools and our businesses and our government and everywhere? I believe that telling and loudly sharing the story of our vision will help to bring this into being. Trumpism is not right. It's just loud. And in the face of this, and while we have to always keep informed about what's happening around us, we must turn our attention to what's happening, and we must turn our attention to a better story and to continue resisting and showing up and supporting those who are in danger and being loud and sharing this story. And we need to stop rejecting those story edits that would take us back into doom and gloom and instead really work to keep the dream alive. I think you know that I think that one extremely necessary element in our new story is community. We have so long lived the myth of the heroic and self-sufficient ego, and we've lost touch with the need for community, for coexisting with and working with others. Pastor Doug Wilson is not trying to take over Moscow, Idaho by himself. He has a whole community behind him. And while I can't support what they're doing, I do think that we can take a lesson from them about the power of acting together. One of yesterday's speakers shared these words found in, of all places, her horoscope for a day last week. Just listen to this. I love these words. There's a maddening paradox in play. While fairness may be a myth, so is futility. In the absence of justice, we can still act and we can find meaning in the cracks. If nothing is fair, then we can build something even better: purpose. Isn't that beautiful? Futility is a myth. We can still act and find meaning in the cracks. We can stop spending time writing reports about stories we don't believe in. We can build a better story, one with purpose and vision, and we can do it together. The only way we lose is if we stop fighting. So let me leave you with this quote from Adrienne Marie Brown. This is, to me, the most exciting thing right now. If we wake up, we are in a place where we can create so much history and so much change. Everything is falling apart, but also new things are possible. Octavius said that there's nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns. We are in a time of new suns. We have no idea what we could be, but we can be mindful about that. It's like we're the action heroes. Once you wake up and recognize, oh, I can shape everything. I don't have to be a victim of someone else's vision. I can actually get to be a powerhouse in my story and the story of my people's lives. Oh, that's a different invitation. So let's live into that invitation, where we are powerhouses in the story of change. Let us cling to the story that speaks out of justice for all. So be it. So Shirley Caesar is an American gospel singer whose career began when she signed with a record label at the age of 12 in 1951. Caesar has often been referred to the First Lady of Gospel, and she's won many awards. We're going to sing one of her songs, This Joy That I Have. I love this song as a song of resistance and a song about claiming our inherent right, what is ours, in the face of whatever comes our way. So please rise in body and or spirit to sing. I think you'll catch on really quickly. Mike and I are going to sing the first verse about joy and ask that you join in on strength or whenever you're ready. So. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. This strength that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This strength that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This strength
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Caitlin Boley. I was raised UU, and having been in search of a brighter future, I moved to Minnesota, and I've been a member of this fellowship congregation ever since I signed the membership book a decade ago on this particular holiday. As members and friends of the First Unitarian Society, we share our time and energy, our creativity, imagination, and vision, our talents and skills, and our gifts of treasure. All of this that this community can be depends on the financial support that makes real our shared vision and values. Every month, the Social Justice Council generously chooses an organization or a cause to support through our special collection. For January, upon the recommendation of our Trans Welcome team, they have chosen Pink Haven Coalition. Here's a video to tell us more. Also a good video.
The Pink Haven Coalition, formed 2 years ago to ensure the survival of two-spirit, trans, and gender-expansive people in a more extreme environment.
We knew a large, grassroots network of groups and individuals gave us the greatest resilience against fascist attacks, as well as the greatest access to resources, without submitting to the insecurities of the nonprofit world of grant cycles and information overshare. We needed to create a network that was both nimble and effective, with a strong security culture to protect everyone involved. This organizing plan has proven wise, as fascists more easily target forward-facing groups and individuals.
Both the UUA and UUSC have become vital partners in the struggle against trans genocide, as have a number of congregations and individuals around the United States. As Unitarians came together during the height of World War II to support people fleeing Nazi persecution, we see the same drive today. Unitarian Universalists have both the historical legacy to be accomplices in the work of trans survival, as well as access to human and financial resources that enable this difficult work to advance.
I have been involved with many organizations over the past 30 plus years, and rarely have I seen one run as effectively, passionately, and with such integrity as this one. Run by impacted people, for impacted people, by listening to those most impacted to get them to a place of safety and hopefully onto a life of self-actualization and success. In this particular time in our country, when so much is in flux, to know that there's an organization doing the work that needs to get done because purely and simply it needs to get done is such a gift, and I continue to treasure the opportunities I have to be a part of it.
The greatest honor for me is being there for our passengers as they share their grief and fear over the hateful conditions that have been imposed on them, and to be a witness to their tears of sadness. But then also, as we help them find hope and ways to greater safety, we give them possibility, then I also get to witness their tears of happiness and of hope. And this is what I want everyone to be able to feel.
Founded and led by two-spirit, trans, and gender-expansive people, the Pink Haven Coalition is uniquely positioned to respond to the reality that every year since 2015 has seen an exponential rise in the number of anti-trans bills in the United States. 2024 was the 5th consecutive record-breaking year of anti-trans legislation, with 579 anti-trans bills currently in progress. Make no mistake, the purpose of these bills is to eradicate trans and non-binary people from public life through barbaric legislation, destroying community bonds, and encouraging state violence. Pink Haven, which is a project of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and First Parish in Malden, Massachusetts, has built an international mutual aid network of people from diverse groups and backgrounds working for trans survival. They've helped hundreds of two-spirit and gender-expansive people get to safer places and find local networks of support, meeting this humanitarian crisis with fierce love and committed service. As the baskets are passed, you are invited to give generously and joyfully as you are willing and able. Donations in the baskets will go to the Pink Haven Coalition. You can also give online, where you can also choose to support the congregation more generally. If you use the QR code on the screen, it will take you to our online giving form. Finally, you can stop by the office after assembly with your donation. We need to keep this network expanding, nimble, and effective. Our trans, two-spirit, and gender-expansive kin need us now. Thank you for your generosity.
Good morning. I'm Hoyt Dreyer. I'm a member of the transition team, and I have been a member of this organization for a paltry 6 years. One of the team's goals is to bring our congregation's past to light so that we can learn from it and use the tools from our history to shape the future of FUS. After assembly today, the transition team is putting on a history smash in the Chalice Room. All are welcome to attend and participate in a deep dive into a portion of our history and how it relates to the present. History Smash dovetails with interpretive displays now hung on the wall outside the lower assembly hall. This is the first in a series of events and displays that will continue throughout the year. Preview coming now. Scene: a town of under 50,000 souls on the Mississippi. The town is alternately covered with snow or mud and rumbling with lumber mills and later flour mills. Still, by 1870, a group of its leading citizens, curious, forward-thinking individuals, are meeting regularly to discuss ideas. Darwin's idea of evolution, Lyell's of geology, and Spencer's social theory. They call themselves the Liberal League. They invite speakers from the university and from anywhere they can to find new learning. A newspaper's cartoon lampoons the public's fear that the Liberal League threatens dogmatic Christianity. O.P. Whitcomb, a member of Unity Church Unitarian across the river in St. Paul, thinks they ought to hear a Unitarian minister. And the Chicago Unitarian's office sends up Henry Martin Simmons. Simmons speaks, and he can speak. The Liberal League members like him and are willing to incorporate as a religious congregation to keep him. The First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis is voted into existence by 19 members on the 18th of November, 1881. Henry Simmons is a terrific speaker, well-educated, compassionate, and thoughtful. By 1882, another 67 members have joined into the society. The society grows by leaps. Mr. Simmons' sermons are mailed around the Midwest. He critiques narrow dogma and injustice. He speaks for women's equality and weaves in the newest updates from science. He'll be voted the most popular preacher in the city at the Minneapolis Exposition of 1888. Society members understand and affirm Mr. Simmons' reference to a tragic massacre by U.S. troops in the Philippines during the Spanish-American War in his sermon. It would be wise to suppress at least the Beatitudes and all Jesus' words of love when we teach our religion to those thousands of women and children whose fathers and husbands we have slain, whose homes we have burned, and whose churches we have blown up to kill the people in them. Henry Martin Simmons dies in 1905, completing 23 and a half years with us. The congregation continues with 2 subsequent short ministries. As they have since 1881, members are hard at work with social service projects and civic efforts. The women's groups start literacy classes for working children, found a kindergarten, and also work for women's suffrage. The men gather weekly at the Society's landmark building on St. Mary's Place and in a discussion group launched by member and Minnesota State Representative Sylvanus Stockwell. It's called the Saturday Lunch Club. Its members are out to reform the Gilded Age corruptions and monopolies of their city and state. It hosts speakers like William Jennings Bryan, John Haynes Holmes, Clarence Darrow, and progressive Minnesota governors John Lind and Floyd Olson. The club are a threat to powerful figures in the city. The Lunch Club continues educating its members in larger spaces after the date of a fire in 1912 that damages the Society's building. During repairs, the Society meets at B'nai Abrams Synagogue, and the Society will later return the favor to another Jewish congregation when it is damaged in fire. Our handsome building must be sold in 1927 when Minneapolis determines to widen its streets, and the Society will move to a house on Loring Park at 1526 Harmon Place. And the congregation will call John Dietrich as minister in 1916. But that is another story.
I think we have some announcements first. Thank you, Paul. I know it's time, but just a few announcements. Here's Heather.
Hello, I'm Heather Martens, chair of your Board of Trustees, and I would like to invite you all to a workshop entitled Creating an Inclusive Organization, Addressing Conflict and Building Authentic Dialogue. This grows from a recognized need at our congregation to work together better, to find better ways to deal with conflict, and to be the kind of community that this moment calls us to be. The facilitator has 30 years of experience, has fashioned this workshop specifically for FUS, and I invite you all to join us on Saturday, January 25th from 10 to noon here at FUS. In order to make it possible for more people to participate, the event will be hybrid, so you can join by Zoom if that makes it possible for you to come. I urge everyone to do so, and I'll be downstairs with a sign-up sheet and a full description of the workshop. Join us.
So just a couple more things. The foraging for our future conversations begin 2 weeks from today on February 2nd. And if you're someone who wants to be part of the core group, please sign up. But know that these gatherings are open to everyone, whether or not you make that commitment to coming regularly. They'll be happening once a month. Ethical Explorers continues every Sunday at 10:30, unless it's otherwise noted in the calendar. And today at 5 p.m., we have a child and family dinner in the Chalice Room. The entree will be provided, but appetizers, desserts, and drinks are welcome. And contact Zola at E2 at firstunitarian.org to RSVP. Out Front, which is Minnesota's largest LGBTQ advocacy organization, will be here on February 1st, on the Saturday, for the first in a quarterly family-oriented series on LGBTQ plus equity. There will be appetizers at 4:30, and then the training is from 5 to 6:30. And again, this is appropriate for all ages, and childcare will be provided. So today, after assembly, please join us downstairs for conversation and our weekly mini meal. There'll be a donation jar and credit card reader for donations, or you can scan a QR code. And the menu today is best gosh darn chicken drummies over buttered rice, or cinnamon squash, or white bean artichoke casserole featuring vegan or omnivore variations, and finished off with can't be beat chocolate cake. And after mini meal, as Hoyt has already told you, you're invited to the first History Smash in the Chalice Room. So now, let us wrap up our time in this space. As Paul extinguishes our chalice, please join me in speaking the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All of these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again. Oh my goodness, talk about insisting on a news story. There's a new story being told there. So please now receive these words that were published by the Unitarian Universalist Association on November 6th, the day after the election. Words that remind us that there is unwavering love at the center of this faith. Beloveds, we will hold our fear together. We will hold our rage and devastation and grief. We will hold one another ferociously, tenderly, faithfully. And then we will move deliberately. We will invest in trust. We will claim joy, rest, and sustenance. We will resist en masse. We will fight fascism and continue the struggle for democracy. We will continue to build our movements for justice. We will focus our efforts and abandon distractions. We will create safe harbor for those in danger. We will leverage our resources. We will sharpen our skills and our analysis. We will act as if no person is disposable. We will refuse the politics of division and despair. We will seek the wisdom of elders and of history. We will weave deeper connections with our neighbors. We will fight for our survival, and we will create the conditions of possibility for our thriving and our liberation. So now, go out into the world, committed to and insistent upon taking action together and telling stories of love and justice. So may it be.